Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on a Tuesday on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie right side. I am Ben Stevens. A ton to get to here in this second hour. Really, we spin it all around the sports landscape. We start with a reaction and a recap to the 2024 WNBA draft last night in Brooklyn. Caitlin Clark goes number 1 overall. What does it mean now for Caitlin Clark, the WNBA, and the Indiana Fever? But we'll go to the PGA Tour in just a moment after that. We'll go to the ice as well with Kasey Hudson, and we'll look at the NBA at the end of the regular season. Not just the playoff picture, DRS, but the individual award races, like that MVP conversation once more.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff here. Also, when we do talk about golf, typically this is a week off as they head up to play in, I believe it's Hilton Head Island this weekend, where it's like, hey, one player in the top 100 plays. It's really one of those tournaments where, hey, if I'm not a top player, I actually get a really chance to spin and win in this one. Scottie Scheffler winning in Augusta is like, yeah, I'm going to play the next weekend. That's got to be a letdown for a lot of people who expected to try to get into those top 2, top 3 spots here, maybe win that tournament. I already saw the field. It's a pretty good field for the RBC. So looking forward to some golf this weekend, which is crazy when it's usually a bye week in golf.
It's a signature event on the PGA Tour. Now, it's a very well-known event with a great history and tradition, but the PGA Tour made it a signature event, which means it's that elite field with a ton of prize money. And the winner at Augusta, Scottie Scheffler, will be in action with his wife still getting ready to give birth to their first child. So many weird things there with the timing of this schedule on the PGA Tour. Let's welcome in that SportsGrid radio audience here to our second hour live on the early line across the SportsGrid network. You're listening on Sirius XM, channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the mix as well. He is Donnie. I am Ben. Before we get to the PGA Tour, the NHL's final 3 days of the regular season, or the NBA award races that are now technically have come to a close, we go to last night in Brooklyn, the 2024 WNBA draft. You have heard Donnie and I say multiple times, this is a moment for women's basketball, with all the excitement and the historic numbers that we saw from the 2024 women's NCAA tournament. Now with those biggest stars playing in the WNBA starting this summer, it's a moment with momentum that was encapsulated last night for the 2024 WNBA draft. They sold tickets to the public for the first time in the W draft's history, and they sold out in 10 minutes. Everybody there to see. As for one of the reasons, Caitlin Clark's coronation, what we well expected, became confirmed last night. Caitlin Clark goes number 1 overall to the Indiana Fever.
Yes, and that's what is expected, should have happened, in the Fever, and now reaping the benefits of that. But we've seen this in the past in the NBA, and quite frankly, last year. Victor Wembanyama is a generational type talent. And the reason I'm bringing up him is because he went to the Spurs. The Spurs then proceeded to go 22-60 on the season, winning 26% of their ball games. So people that think that Caitlin is going to go to Indiana and immediately she's going to be the MVP, they're going to run roughshod and dominate the entire league. That's not the case. There's a lot of very good professional women in this league, and there's a reason why you draft number 1 overall. It's because your basketball team isn't very good. So there's going to be an uphill climb, but it will be fun to watch that climb because he's a very exciting player. But some people that just expect Caitlin Clark to say, boy, I just watched her at Iowa mow everybody down. What's going on in the NBA or WNBA? It's a tougher league because it's a professional league, and she's not going to the top team that says, you know what, I could just be me. I got 4 other all-stars with me to sort of try to help me out. So just keep an eye on that. She will succeed and be great, but right off the bat, don't expect a championship for the Fever year number 1.
So yes and no. The WNBA is very differently structured, though, than the NBA. There's only 12 teams in the league, so you can make up some ground where 8 of the 12 teams reach the postseason. Now, the Indiana Fever have not been a playoff team for 7 consecutive years. That is task number 1 for Caitlin Clark, who was the number 1 overall pick this year, and she will join the number 1 overall pick from a year ago, Aaliyah Boston. As fearsome as a backcourt, frontcourt mate as you will find around the W. And Aaliyah Boston was sensational in her rookie campaign, the Rookie of the Year, by a pretty good margin in the WNBA a season ago. The Indiana Fever in the 40-game regular season last year in the W, 13-27. Their win total this year, 21.5. A ton of expectations. expectation to make the postseason. It was minus 215 yesterday. It's now minus 260. Again, the Fever have not seen the playoffs in 7 consecutive seasons. And I would not bet this, but Caitlin Clark's price to win the WNBA MVP is 12-1. It is the 4th best number in the league, DRS, only behind Asia Wilson, who won it 2 years ago, Brianna Stewart, who won it a year ago, and Alyssa Thomas, who sets historic marks in triple doubles each and every season. Again, I wouldn't bet it, but that's what the odds are saying based on the optimism, the notoriety, and the expectation for Caitlin Clark in the WNBA.
Sounds like Tiger Woods about 5 years ago, right? Like, hey, he's not really going to be this odds mark, but so many people are going to bet that individual. We have to move that number lower. Now, if she's in the top 3, top 4 race here to be MVP, obviously the Fever were a very good basketball team during the regular season. But as you pointed out, those statistics from last year and a team that's not used to making the playoffs, this might be a tougher dig out here than what we even anticipated, because I didn't know they hadn't made the playoffs in that long ago. And as you explained also, a lot of teams in the WNBA percentage-wise make the playoffs, then miss the playoffs here. So that's pretty crazy. But it will be fun to watch as it plays out. And great. It's a team that was downtrodden for 7 years that's now going to have sellouts every single night at home. So a different atmosphere, which certainly, if you're a downtrodden franchise, doesn't it feel good to have fans in the stands cheering for you here? Maybe that changes up a lot this year for the Fever.
For sure. Indiana has already sold out season tickets. As I said at the start of the show, they had more than 17,000 people claim tickets to the free watch party of the draft last night at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in downtown Indianapolis. So Caitlin Clark goes first overall. Second overall, Cameron Brink to the Los Angeles Sparks, the Defensive Player of the Year, one of the most talented bigs in all of women's college basketball. The Chicago Sky loaded up in the front court. At third overall, Camila Cardoso from the national title-winning South Carolina Gamecocks. And at seventh, with their second pick in the top 8, Angel Reese. Fourth overall, what a front court it is. Rakia Jackson joins Cameron Brink for the Sparks in Los Angeles. A very proud franchise trying to find their footing once again. J.C. Sheldon, 5th overall to the Dallas Wings. Aaliyah Edwards, 6th overall to the Washington Mystics. And Elisa Peely, 8th overall to the Minnesota Lynx. That, the lottery in the WNBA draft.
There you go, and away we go. By the way, what's the first game? Like, what are we looking forward to now in the WNBA? When's tip-off?
May 12th, I believe. Middle of May. May 14th, excuse me.
Betting above the rim,
listen,
place to be.
It's a very, very quick turnaround. By the way, Caitlin Clark, minus 950 to win the WNBA's Rookie of the Year award. And as we said, 12-1 to win the WNBA MVP, 4th best price. But the Las Vegas Aces, the 2-time defending champs, the short favorites to make it 3 in a row. PGA Tour talk next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Don't just think because a major championship, the 2024 Masters, has now come to a close, that golf is still not rolling on the PGA Tour. A signature event this week at the RBC Heritage in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And we welcome on Stewart joining us live from the RBC Heritage to look forward to this signature event and, of course, look back and tie a final bow on what we saw this previous week at Augusta National Golf Club. Keith, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the early line.
It is a beautiful day down in the low country. Let's talk a little Masters and, maybe get into the RBC if we have some time.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. The timeline is a little bit of a funky thing this week on the PGA Tour with a signature event in a stacked field following the first major championship of the year in the world of golf. Let's go back to Augusta, though. He was the very short favorite entering the tournament. He is the hottest golfer on planet Earth. He is, frankly, the best golfer on the planet at this moment. Scottie Scheffler wins his second green jacket in the previous 3 years, his second major championship by the age of 27. Scottie Scheffler at 11 under par, your winner at Augusta National, pacing the field, Keith, by 4 strokes. How do you describe the dominant play you have seen out of Scottie Scheffler here this season?
Well, I think the best way to describe how dominant Scottie has been is just to look at what he's accomplished. There's only 2 other players that have won two players championships and 2 green jackets. One's Jack Nicklaus, the other one's Tiger Woods. Only one other player's won the Players and the Masters in the same year, and that's Tiger Woods in 2001. 4 guys now with Scottie have won 2 green jackets by the time that they're 27. Seve, Jack, Tiger. I mean, the list that he's putting himself on, it's unfair to make comparisons. But as far as history goes, Scottie is writing some of his own.
Keith, we've had some of these golfers, break out. Let's just say the Brooks Koepkas of the past, and maybe he could be on a trajectory to take down Tiger Woods and take down Jack Nicklaus for most of the championships won. Now, having said that, where are we putting Scottie Scheffler in that pantheon already? 27 years old, 2 green jackets here. What's in the future for him? What are the expectations we now have for Scottie Scheffler?
Well, immediately the expectations at the level with which he's ball striking right now is the Grand Slam this year. Can he go for 4 in a row? That conversation's already being had. And then it also gets to the point of, okay, well, Scottie's only 27. I feel personally like he's at the beginning of his power, not in the middle. He's got just 9 wins, and he's got a long way to go before he's even 30. As far as I'm concerned, really, to answer your question, I think the sky's actually the limit, because the level of consistency that he has shown over the last 3 years with his ball striking is a testament to just basically how good this guy is of a golfer. And I guess the one thing we could say is that if we were worried about any sort of distraction, other than him becoming a father, I just don't see any. The guy's not on social media. He seems extremely grounded in his faith and in himself. He seems completely content with where he is and with his golf game, and he's super confident, and he probably has one of the best caddy-player relationships on the tour. As far as I'm concerned, I think you'd have to say the over-under is easily 1.5 majors this year that he can take home.
Yeah, absolutely so. Scottie Scheffler in his last 4 events, a victory at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, a signature event on the PGA Tour. He went back-to-back at the Players' Championship, and then he finished tied 2 at the Houston Open, very narrowly getting in on a playoff, and of course, a green jacket at Augusta National this past weekend. So we put him almost in Tiger Woods' category at this moment, Keith, and some of the historic trends you mentioned there that Scottie is paired alongside Tiger. Now, Tiger wasn't in contention on Sunday at Augusta. In fact, he finished in dead last out of all players that made the cut. But to complete 4 rounds in a major championship, what does it mean for Tiger Woods?
I think it's tremendous good news because he hadn't completed 4 rounds since the 2023 Genesis. So and he hadn't completed 4 rounds in a major since Augusta 2 years ago. So for us, it's all good signs. And it's really not the ankle that's the problem. He's got to get his back healthy and other parts of his body. And let me be clear about this. Augusta National Golf Club is, of all the major championships, the hardest one to walk for him and for anyone. I mean, you're going up 4 stories every time you trek it around 5.2 miles. It really is a tough walk. And I think the only reason that he does, fight through 4 rounds there is that because he knows the golf course so well and because he has such a fondness for the facility and for the tournament. But looking forward to Valhalla, of course, then you've got Pinehurst. We've got a couple easier walks there. Maybe not Kentucky as much as down there in North Carolina for Pinehurst number 2. But Tiger's already talking about taking trips there early to start to, handicap the golf courses, start to figure out, how he can play them. So he's got a healthy mindset. I mean, I know a lot of us, after what we saw on Saturday with the Ben Gay routine and the icy hot patches and everything, we thought that the jet was fired up on Saturday night. For him to be there with his son on Saturday morning is a tremendous sign for all golf fans.
Let's take a look at Tiger Woods as a whole. Expectations maybe not to win major championships or tournaments anymore, but just to finish golf tournaments. When do we see Tiger Woods again? And also, for this season, is it just the majors, or does he have some strategic golf courses that he likes to play that will appear outside of the majors?
Well, he said it himself, Donnie, back in December. If we could get him 1 time a month, that would be great. So going forward over the next, 100 days, including the Masters there, we basically have 1 major a month. Now, he's not going to be able to qualify for many events past that because he'll need the points in the playoffs. So I think we're at a point now where if we could get him in February, March, April, May, and June, and July at the Open Championship, then we're going to get pretty much the standard Tiger slate for the next couple of years going forward, unless, of course, he has some sort of great comeback with his health. But as we saw over the weekend, Tiger's still struggling just to live day to day and be healthy and play competitive golf.
So now we move it forward to the RBC Heritage this week. And when you look at the odds board and you look at the expected field, it's a signature event on the PGA Tour. So many of the same guys, including Scottie Scheffler, that entered last week as the favorites to win a green jacket at Augusta, are doing the same thing this week in the RBC Heritage. Keith, let's start with the timeline. What does it mean for the PGA Tour to have a signature event the week after the first major of the year?
I think it puts a lot of stress on the players. They did it a couple times last year. They did it here after the Masters, and then they gave them a really tough one when they sent everyone to Connecticut and the Travelers 1 week after they played LACC in the U.S. Open. And I think it's kind of just a sign of the times. The schedule in and of itself, they're just trying to piecemeal it together as they put together this partnership agreement with PIF and LIV, and every year the schedule's changing, and I've got news for everybody. It's going to change again next year. It probably will change again the year after that. I'm hopeful by 2026 that we have something in place where we aren't doing this, where even I'm feeling rushed going from Augusta National Golf Club, getting in the car on Monday, running down here 160 miles to Hilton Head. I mean, these guys had to be exhausted after last week. That golf course played so hard in the wind and the conditions that they had in it. It was such a great test. But at the same time, now to come down here and to get it all going again for a huge purse and a lot of points on the line, I think it's tough for everyone involved. And I'm hopeful that going forward that we can space these things out just a little bit more.
So, Keith, 45 seconds left in this segment. Let's talk a couple of odds and picks. Who do you like this week in the RBC Heritage?
Well, my early leans on the early line is I can't take Scheffler at the number that he's at. So I'm going to go with the kid, Ludwig Aubert. Unbelievable. 7 straight top 25s. And the last time he was in the Low Country, he won the RSM Classic at Sea Island. A little further down the board, I'm going to go with the Hairman. That's Tommy Fleetwood, plus 2,000. He's had 4 starts here. He's played great, and he was obviously excellent at the Masters. And then further down the board, plus 6,600, I love Cam Davis. 3 starts here and one of the strokes gains leaders on property.
Keith Stewart, we appreciate the time. Enjoy the RBC Heritage this week down in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Now we go to the ice. A National Hockey League recap in the final week of the regular season. Kasey Hudson up next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The final 3 days of the NHL regular season, and there is so much to determine before one of the best postseasons in all of sports. That's the Stanley Cup playoffs. You need the advice on the ice, so enter Kasey Hudson, joining us once again, live right here on this Tuesday morning on the early line. Kasey, I've been checking the mailbox each and every day for the past week since you were here last week on the early line. I know Donnie Rightside's been doing the same in South Jersey. I have not got my Tampa Bay Lightning jersey just yet, but I'll keep checking for the sweater.
It's coming, custom stitching, because we've got the nicknames now. So we've got Rightside and Recap, and I want it to look perfect for you guys. So Saturday morning, check the mail.
Right side and Recap. That's good.
Get Ben a
I
jersey.
like that.
Forget about a regular jersey. Just give him a jersey. Give me the jersey. All good.
What do you get? A jersey? Why?
No, you get a jersey. I get a jersey. Yeah, there you go.
That's what I said. Yeah. But you're a Flyers fan. I have no NHL team affiliation, thus I can go fully in on the Bolts this postseason. You're a Flyers fan, and Philly's still in the hunt, DRS. All right, we'll get to the Eastern Conference playoff race in just a moment, but now to actual business. Yesterday, Kasey, inside Madison Square Garden, the Rangers win once again. They blanked the Ottawa Senators 4-0. And what does that mean? New York has now claimed the best record in the NHL this regular season, otherwise known as the President's Trophy. Should the Rangers be celebrating winning the President's Trophy and the best team in the NHL's regular season?
Absolutely, at least for my case and anybody else in the Eastern Conference. You want them to be excited about the President's Trophy curse because the President's Trophy keeps doing what it does so well. It knocks these teams out when they think they have a fighting chance to hoist the cup. So as a Tampa Bay Lightning coverage person, I'm psyched about this. But I will say the Rangers have very much earned their point streaks, their W's, as well as the President's Trophy.
Yeah, it should be interesting to say, again, you still want to be that team with 114 points headed in. I don't think many teams like, no, it's a curse because we're not a good team. But it sort of stacks up and shows you really how hard it is to win the Stanley Cup through all of those rounds. You get good goalie play, you can get knocked out as a top seed. We see that many times in the past. Talking about a team that was one of those top seeds in the past, those Pittsburgh Penguins that were left for dead at the trade deadline here, seemingly making a surge into the playoffs with a big victory last night against the Predators. Sidney Crosby, Kasey, he won't go away.
Oh, yeah, he's not taking no for an answer. But aside from Crosby and Malkin and obviously the acquisition of Karlsson, who's tremendous on walking the blue line, where my eyes gravitate to is Michael Bunting. I loved his play with the Bruins last year, his momentum, the way that he picked up his play gearing into playoffs. And then even though they had that drop, he was a tremendous clutch player for the Bruins during playoffs. I loved him going to the Hurricanes, and I love him even more with the Penguins because he's picked up 2 goals in the last 2 games, and he's just so consistent for this team. He creates passing lanes and opportunities, and he's such a threat in traffic. And Sidney Crosby's feeding off of it. That's how he acquired one of his goals last night, cleaning up a rebound from Michael Bunting, who was just a threat net front yesterday. So they have a lot of good players. They have a lot of good playmakers. They can alleviate Crosby, but Crosby's just that clutch guy. You lose going into playoffs by 1 point last season, you're going to have a painful ache in your chest. That's where the Penguins lie.
And they lost that game to the Blackhawks as greater than a $3 favorite. I still remember it very, very well. The Pittsburgh Penguins needed to win last night on home ice against the Preds, and the Pens did that. They're a point behind 2 teams right now in the wild card race. If the season ended today, it does not. There's still one more game for everybody else around the NHL. The Capitals would be in that second and final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. It is the only playoff spot still up for grabs. We got to figure out some seed line throughout the rest of the Stanley Cup postseason. But we'll talk about all the teams, Kasey, including the Penguins, in the hunt for that second and final wild card spot out east. That includes the Red Wings at home last night in the Motor City. It went to overtime. It was dicey against the Canadiens. Detroit was a minus 225 home money line favorite, and they do make good on the number. The OT winner, the Red Wings, survive 5-4. How significant was the victory for Detroit last night?
Oh, beyond significant. I think if anything, it kind of tampered with the Penguins' hopes and dreams yet again of making the playoffs. A lot of people counted them out of that game, especially because nobody kind of saw that comeback in the third period and the OT win. But this team has forced 3 overtimes consecutively, and they've won 2 of those 3 overtimes. They're so hard to keep out of the third period, but they're very, very high offensively weaponed team. It's keeping the puck out of their net, which has been problematic. But last time we got a chance to talk last week, I talked about Alex Line and how tremendous he's been, especially his goals above expectancy. And if he can clean that up tonight, then you're looking at the Red Wings being a problem where the Penguins have to face the Islanders, who are really feeling themselves right now. So Gostisbehere, tremendous acquisition. I love his play. He's helping out Seider quite a bit. Their defense has to lock in just a bit more in order for them to secure a playoff spot.
The Ghost, a former Flyer here doing big things on the national stage. And by the way, the Philadelphia Flyers on life support. Why? It feels like everybody that needed to win, Kasey, last night to make the playoffs did just that. The Red Wings with that big comeback down 4-1. You take a look at the Penguins here. We're a slight dog price against the Predators. They won. And then take a look at the Capitals. 2-0 here over the Boston Bruins. A big-time win here. Ovechkin still trying to get back into the playoffs, just like Sidney Crosby. Those aging vets trying to lead their team down the stretch. That was a nice win for the Caps last night.
Oh my gosh. And it was pretty unexpected. We know the Capitals have a top defense, but shutting out the Boston Bruins as you're gearing into playoffs, definitely didn't have that on the bingo card. But again, it shakes things up in the wild card conversation. It's not just the fact that they beat the Bruins. I think through 40 minutes, they held the Bruins to just 8 shots on goal. Their defense is making it impossible to score. And if you do get through their defense, Lindgren has been standing on top of his head between the pipes. So the Capitals are extremely scary right now, and they're probably leading the charge when it comes to claiming that playoff spot. Also, the numbers shifted. Yesterday, heading into the games, you had the Red Wings sitting at plus 110 to make the playoffs. As of this morning, you got the Capitals sitting at plus 120 to secure the win. Yeah. And even though they're going back-to-back, you're going against a Flyers team, unfortunately, Donnie, that is struggling to score for one. Now, all of a sudden, struggling to keep pucks out of their net. So if the Capitals can just hold them yet again and post a goal or two, then they're stamping their ticket.
So, Kasey, as we look at where the things stand around the Eastern Conference wild card race, your Tampa Bay Lightning have already clinched that playoff spot. It is a battle for the second and final. The Caps, 89 points. The Red Wings, 89 points. The Penguins, 88 points. And the Flyers still holding on ever so slightly with 87 points. And all 4 of those teams have just 1 game remaining. We'll talk about the one tonight between the Capitals and the Flyers in just a moment. If you had to pick it right now, who claims the final wild card spot in the Eastern Conference?
Right now, had to make a decision. I value my wallet. I'm going to go with the Capitals. I wanted to pick the Red Wings so bad, but even if the Caps and the Red Wings win, I think the Caps secure that spot. Plus, the defense that they're playing with, the veteranship that's stepping up for this team. And again, you go into the playoffs with a top-notch goaltender, then you're looking at making a pretty complete run here. So I'm going to go with the Capitals at this moment.
Let's take a look at some action on the ice tonight, which includes South Philadelphia. That is those Washington Capitals on the road to take on the Philadelphia Flyers. The FanDuel Sportsbook showing the Flyers as a favorite tonight at a minus 146 price and a total listed at 5.5. Now, me as a Flyers fan, if we're not going to be able to make the playoffs, you want to take the Pittsburgh Penguins down with you. So maybe the Flyers get hammered tonight by Washington, which allows Washington to get into the playoffs and the Pittsburgh Penguins to have that not-so-nice maybe finish to that regular season. But what happens on the ice tonight in your respective mind here, Kasey, between the Flyers and the Capitals?
I'm supporting your statement, Donnie. I'd like to see everybody just go down crumbling together. Why not? But yeah, with the total here, I played on it for a second. I was kind of leaning towards the under 5.5 because, again, you're looking at a Capitals team that just held the Bruins to 16 shots on goal total through 60 minutes of play, as well as no goals. And they're doing really well at being consistent with limiting their opponent to 2 or less goals. With that said, you also have the Flyers struggling to get goals on the board. If they do, you're looking at an average of about 2 goals. So you're looking at 2 teams that put up less than 3 goals per performance. So I like the under 5.5. I like the plus money value of 100 right here. If that freaks you out a little bit because playoffs, all the things, you can look at the alternate goal total of under 6.5 at minus 164. I also really like the alternate puck line for the Caps at plus 2.5 here, as well as the Caps to pick up the third period goal, because that's where they put the nail in the coffin and secure their ticket. So those are my best values for tonight. But I see the Capitals taking this one. I think they're going to have a chip on their shoulder and be extra confident. I think the Flyers come in as a favorite just because of the Capitals' typical road record, but none of that's really coming into play right now. The Caps are just hungry, and their defense is on the terror.
So as Kasey said, and as we saw those playoff odds change for the final spot in the Eastern Conference, plus 120, the Caps now the shortest number. It is virtually their money line price on the road tonight in Philly, plus 122. If the Capitals win, they are into the playoffs. That is the most simple of all the factors. The Red Wings also in action tonight. A hefty road money line favorite in Montreal, minus 176. Detroit would need a Washington loss to Philadelphia and a win on the road over the Canadiens. Kasey, anything we need to pay attention to elsewhere on the ice tonight?
Yeah, you've got the Maple Leafs taking on the Panthers. I like the Panthers money line here. I know that, again, they secured their ticket to playoffs, but you're talking about a head coach that's still not pleased with their play. He wants to start seeing that playoff level, and the Panthers are going to have to bring the heat tonight. And plus, they're 12-1 when playing after 2 days of rest, so I like those odds also. Bruins money line should be good to go. I like an under 5.5 total versus the Senators because their goaltending is kind of kept them in any kind of conception yesterday. Hurricanes money line as well. Check out some power play points with Jarvis and company, and that's what I've got for tonight.
Kasey Hudson, thank you so much. Can't wait for the Lightning jersey in just a few days. More on the early line up next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night. Only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. It is a Tuesday. It is also the start officially of the NBA postseason. Play-in tournament action tonight in the Western Conference. The 7-8 matchup. The 7 seed, the New Orleans Pelicans, host the 8 seed, the Los Angeles Lakers. Game is a virtual pick'em. The nightcap up in California's capital. Sacramento, the 9 seed, hosting the 10 seed, the Golden State Warriors, in a rematch of last year's opening round in the playoffs. So, the postseason about to begin. The regular season came to a close on Sunday, which means those regular season award markets are now also gone. We look at the NBA awards favorites at their closing price as compared to where they were to begin the season. Now, DRS, we did have some kind of conversation yesterday about who should be the NBA MVP. Our own SportsGrid Twitter account was chirping at you that it should be Jalen Brunson. He didn't even have a price listed as one of the 3 guys in the NBA MVP odds market before the market closed on Sunday. Nikola Jokic was the favorite at minus 7,000. Nikola Jokic was the preseason favorite to win his 3rd NBA MVP award in the past 4 seasons at plus 430. Victor Wembanyama was the preseason favorite to win the Rookie of the Year. He ended the year as the favorite as well, despite at a certain point Chet Holmgren overtaking him for that favored number. Rudy Gobert, the favorite to win Defensive Player of the Year at close. Tyrese Maxey, the favorite to win the Most Improved Player at the end of the year. Malik Monk, 6th man, and the coach, Mark Daigneault, who, of course, is the coach of
OKC.
Oklahoma City Thunder. Bang, bang, DRS on top of his game. He closed as the favorite. He had the shortest price before the year got underway. Any surprises, DRS, in those 6 award categories for you?
Not necessarily, and we'll break down some of those, but let's just start at the MVP with Nikola Jokic. Like, coming into this season as, let's just say, the favorite, right? You say to yourself, like, we've already been through this exercise, Ben, the past, 3 to 4 weeks at this point, if we include the NCAA tournament. You knew Nikola Jokic was probably the best player in the NBA coming in with a legitimate chance to win that award. But so many people would look at that and say, well, I'm not taking a plus 430 price. So many things can happen. There's now a new 65-game minimum. Who knows if Jokic gets injured or can't play in the 65 games? I would hate to bet that here. But again, the end of the season. Now, we haven't voted on it yet. It's not finalized, but it's looking like Nikola Jokic is going to win another MVP. Are we wrong to approach this differently next year once again to say just take the best player overall and don't care what the odds are because the chances of him cashing that ticket are quite high? Jokic, basically, for me, was wire to wire. Now, granted, we saw a great performance by Joel Embiid until he got injured. Would have been interested to see where the Sixers actually figured. They would have been the 7th seed. Sixers probably would have been able to get that number 2 overall seed, which would have made that head-to-head once again for a second straight year be very incredible to watch. But for me, it's always been Nikola Jokic, and we had that argument earlier this week. Well, actually, we weren't argument. This is the argument in place, like, well, should Luka Doncic be the MVP or Nikola Jokic? And it's basically saying, man, if you just take that entire body of work from day one all the way through the end of the season, it's always been Jokic for me, Ben.
Listen, there are award markets in other sports that prior to the year we see drastic movement. But in the NBA MVP markets the last 4 to 5 years, you can pretty much point to one guy, Nikola Jokic or Joel Embiid, as the other. And with the 65-game minimum this year instituted in the NBA, that eliminated JoJo. So you're really looking at numbers. And when you look at these 6 categories we posted up there, 3 of the 6 closing favorites were the preseason favorites. And the other 2 of the other 4, or of the other 3, were the second best price, Tyrese Maxey, to win MIP, which I think is crazy. Tyrese Maxey can be involved in Most Improved Player, and Malik Monk to win the 6th man was the 3rd best price. The only upset, which is rather surprising, is Rudy Gobert to win Defensive Player of the Year, tied for the 7th best number to win that award before the year got started. He's already won it, though, 3 times in his NBA career. So none of these names really are all that surprising. And, Donnie, I think you bring up a great point. When we enter next NBA season, I would bet 3 guys to win the NBA MVP award. I would bet Nikola Jokic, I would bet Joel Embiid, and I would also bet Luka Doncic. Because I think Luka is going to win an NBA MVP award in his time. And I would not be surprised if All three of the guys I just mentioned have the three shortest prices entering next season.
But we know how this goes, right? And I can't wait until the season is over and the FanDuel Sportsbook is going to post that awards, because it feels like we all want Luka Doncic to win that award. So we know how this goes. Well, if you give another one to Jokic, he's almost off the table, Ben, for next year to win another one. If another superstar player has an equal year to Nikola Jokic, he's going to get that bypass here. So it feels like, to me, this was one of those years where we know how good Nikola Jokic is. Yes, he can win another MVP, but when you take a look at Doncic, that we know heading into it, he's not going to be 13-1, 10-1 to win the award. He is going to be in the top 2 or 3, and as long as he performs, we're going to want to vote him in and give him an MVP award. So that's also one of those takes you can have. And by the way, the MIP, the most improved player, Tyrese Maxey, currently listed in who's top? Who is actually the top of the leaderboard for that award? Who was the favorite at the end of the season for MIP?
Friezo?
Do we know?
Who was the favorite preseason to win most improved player? Mikal Bridges was the favorite, DRS, to win most improved player before the year got underway after a very strong start to his Brooklyn Nets tenure, being traded a season ago from Phoenix in the Kevin Durant deal.
So Maxey right now is the favorite right now to win it, is what we're saying. At 11-1,
closing favorite, second best price. No, that 11-1 number was the preseason number, second best. He closed as the favorite to win most improved player.
Okay. Yeah, which is kind of wild, because I was actually hoping that I saw that second that somebody was ahead of him. So I was like, well, who's most improved player? Was it LeBron James? I mean, what type of an award is that? At the most improved player is supposed to be, Ben. I was the 12th man on my team last year. Now I'm the 7th man. I went from 2 points to 6 points. Boy, you're really improving. Not like, oh, yeah, this guy's an all-star. Boy, he really improved this year. It's kind of crazy how we vote on some of these obstacles, but that one really stuck out. But also, interesting to that point where Victor Wembanyama, where we open up the season, like, what, are we kidding me? Isn't this just a absolute gift here at a minus 145? Maybe Chet Holmgren could steal that, but at the end of the time, like, we all thought as long as he was healthy, he was going to win that award, and rightfully so. He was tremendous in the second part of the season. So well-deserved for Victor Wembanyama, who had a little bit of a conflict early in the season if he was going to be that guy that wins the Rookie of the Year, but certainly most approving of that. Yes, he's going to get that.
It was an availability conversation for Victor Wembanyama. If the Spurs struggled, would they rest him at certain points of the year? Obviously, a ridiculous alien-like frame at 7'4", 7'5". How would it adjust to the physicality of the NBA and this new schedule? It wasn't an issue. 71 of 82 games played for Victor Wembanyama, clearing the 65-game threshold, and he was sensational. And even when Chet Holmgren became the slight favorite from Oklahoma City in his second year in the NBA, but his first full season, of course, after missing all of 2022-23, they weren't separated by much. It wasn't like Chet Holmgren was minus 1,000 and Vic now was plus 2,000, and you could have got a really good price. He was still plus 125. It was plus money, though, and the numbers for Victor Wembanyama, when all was said and done, better than 21 points per game, averaged a double-double at better than 10.5 rebounds, nearly 4 assists, 3.6 blocks per game. Victor Wembanyama, the generational talent, as highly touted as anybody we had seen in the last 20 years since LeBron James, lived up to the billing. Now, San Antonio did not have the drastic turnaround with him as the number 1 overall pick, as I brought up in years past. In the 2 previous times they drafted first overall, David Robinson, the Admiral, back in the late 80s. Tim Duncan, of course, in the late 90s. In both of their first seasons in San Antonio, winning 60-plus games, they were just 22-60, one of the worst in the Western Conference. But the talent alone, Victor Wembanyama is very much there. I do want to say this quickly about Luka Doncic. Nearly 34 points per game, 33.9, led the NBA when all was said and done. Over 9.5 assists per game, 9.8, second best in the NBA. Very nearly led the league in both points and assists. He had 16 30-point triple-doubles. He scored 73 points earlier this NBA season in a single game. He had a run of 6 consecutive 30-point triple-doubles for the first time in NBA history. It is kind of crazy that he's not going to win the NBA MVP award with those numbers and Dallas finishing in the 5 spot in the Western Conference, but it's almost like Shohei Ohtani when he pitches and hits in Major League Baseball. And we had this conversation yesterday. What Nikola Jokic is doing is now expected. It is almost a guarantee but it is still otherworldly for a guy that is virtually averaging a triple-double and shooting better than 55% from the floor. It's like, yeah, that's what we expect out of Jokic. But just because we expect it does not make it any less meaningful that he continues to match those expectations.
No, and you're right. We expect like, oh, what did he do last night? Well, he had 17 points, 14 rebounds, and 10 assists. That's average. Like 10 years ago, that was an all-pro, unbelievable night that led SportsCenter at that point. But now we know the triple-double sort of, a little bit less because these guys are doing a lot more from different positions. You're basically running the offense through the Denver Nuggets, and I understand a lot of those assists that Nikola Jokic gets are those dribble drive handoffs there and standing at the top of the key and throwing to a guy for a wide open 15-foot jump shot. But that's part of the offense, and that's what you get. Other guys get that as well. But if you equate the NBA to the NFL in a sort of reality on who can win the MVP, you take a look at the NFL to be an all-pro. Ben, typically you have to be an all-pro for like 2 years before you actually get crowned all-pro. It's like we have to see it coming. You have to put in that work. It feels like sometimes that's the MVP where nobody really surprises in the NBA, comes out of nowhere and wins the MVP. Like SGA is on the ascension to possibly getting an MVP. Jason Tatum, we're waiting for him as well. Luka Doncic is on the cusp of it, which we talk about next year and winning the MVP. He is going to be right there as the front runners, and as long as he is good, we want to give him the award. Not to say Joel Embiid didn't deserve it, because he quite frankly did, but Joel Embiid was on the cusp for a few years of being the MVP. Then if you go toe-to-toe with Nikola Jokic, you say, well, Jokic already got one. Do you want to give it back-to-back, or now's the time for Joel Embiid? Joel Embiid got his MVP award. I feel that next year, when you're trying to line that up for Luka, it just feels right. Like next year, MVP, Luka Doncic.
Here's the funny thing about Nikola Jokic and the idea of voter fatigue as well. I think it played a huge part last year not to give a guy 3 in a row, despite his numbers last year being better than any of his MVP winning seasons. And that's why Joel Embiid, with also incredible numbers, was able to win the NBA MVP award. I do not believe they want to give Nikola Jokic 4 MVPs in 5 years. That's why you can look elsewhere next season. But it's almost like, what can a guy like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or even Jalen Brunson do? They lead their teams to heights they haven't seen in a while, but they're not putting up 25-point triple-doubles on average. It's very difficult in this day and age to supersede that in terms of the idea of most valuable. But what Oklahoma City has done this year is sensational. They lost in the play-in tournament a season ago. There was optimism for this young core. And Mark Daigneault, of course, was the favorite to be the coach of the year. He's going to win that award. SGA is going to finish probably in the top 3 when it comes to the MVP. And more importantly, outside of the individual award races, the Oklahoma City Thunder will enter the NBA playoffs as the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. And look what they accomplished this season, and look at how the odds have reflected that optimism now reached with expectation. We'll talk about the play-in tournament games tonight in the Western Conference up next.
People that bashed him will be eating their words this year.
Pretty heavily favored to be a first-round pick, minus 400 earlier this week. But that's not the surprise.
If you're drafting J.J. McCarthy in the first half of the first round, you clearly believe not only is he a starter, he's going to be your starter for years to come. But
a popular bet was under 3.5 wide receivers in the first round.
The tape doesn't lie, baby.
Only on SportsGrid.
Victor Hovland right now can probably hit it right where he's looking on the range. But the problem is when you get out to a golf course, especially like Augusta National, it's a big, big picture. You can see every shot in the world, but the targets are really, really small.
I feel like whoever we pick is going to win. Like, I feel like we have the power to choose the winner of this tournament.
I know. I'm surprised more guys haven't reached out.
And they might, and they probably will.
Only on SportsGrid.
89-87, 0.6 seconds remaining. Big drama here in this game. Always frustrating when your Final Four parlay and bracket gets busted, but here we go. I'm done.
Look what he is now. He's on FanDuel, plus 120. Almost even money to win the tournament. So you actually, if you did get him at plus 260, you got a pretty good, better investment than you had before. Just saying.
Sports Rage Late Night, only on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
We close out this second hour of a Tuesday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. It is the opening night officially of the NBA postseason. Not the playoffs, postseason. Play-in tournament action in the Western Conference. The Pelicans host the Lakers. It's our first game of NBA postseason action. Then the Kings host the Warriors in the nightcap out in California's capital. What is the best bet? That's a question we had to hear from you, and an answer that we need and Fade the Public. I personally have to change my answer. What is the best bet for tonight's play-in games? We said, was it the Lakers now actually as a slight underdog, the Pelicans as the slight favorite, but it's a virtual pick'em, so we won't care about the point spread in our Fade the Public poll. Warriors laying 2.5 or 3, or the Kings as the home underdog in Sacramento. I went with the Lakers as the slight favorite or slight underdog, but a pick'em in New Orleans. 42% of the public going with the Late Show as well. Now that feels too public to me, Donnie.
Yeah, I'm going to reveal mine after the break because I got a bone to pick with the NBA at this point. So, you know what the best bet tonight's going to be? Yeah, Lakers and the Pelicans getting better ratings than the Warriors and Kings because the NBA figures in a win or go home situation, nobody is going to watch game number 2. Congratulations if you want your commercials for like your Kia or Toyotas running. You better have them in the 7 o'clock game because nobody's going to watch your commercials at 10 o'clock. Heck, I'm going to wake up in the morning, I have no idea, just like the rest of the East Coast, on who actually won Warriors Kings. What are we doing, NBA? This does not make any sense whatsoever. None. Zero.
Donnie Rightside, the czar of when TV is played and when teams and leagues put their most valuable games on the TV schedule. Donnie Rightside is having none of it, even between two teams that reside in Northern California playing a 7 p.m. local time tip. Hour 3, 55 seconds away.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.